Hi, Congregation Bethel. It's Rabbi Rosenberg, and I wanted to share a little message as we get into Shabbat here. This week, we learn in the Torah about the Nazarite. Now, the Nazarite was the closest thing we've ever had in Judaism to a hermit, a person who wanted to get closer to God, who wanted to spend time focusing on holiness, might do so by taking a Nazarite vow. They would vow to abstain from any alcohol, they would vow to abstain from cutting their hair, and they might take on other restrictions as well. And this was a way they might choose to separate from the ordinary world so they could focus more on holiness. Now, the text, the Torah, also has with it a ritual for the Nazarite to re-enter the world at the end of their Nazarite term. And that ritual includes a sin offering. And that confused the rabbis of old, because this would seem to be the moment when a sin offering was least needed. This was a person who just spent weeks or months even totally focused on holiness. Why could they possibly have to atone for anything? And the answer that most of the sages give is the Nazarite is actually atoning for becoming a Nazarite. You were allowed to do this, but it's not ideal, because in becoming a Nazarite, we have separated ourselves from the world. And the rabbis want us to know that that's never a good idea. Now, a lot of those teachings quite beautifully focus on separating from the material world and teaching us that the things around us, the bounty and beauty of this world are not sinful. They're actually potentially a pathway to holiness. But there's a different sense as well, which is that the Nazarite has separated from society. That's probably at least partly the effect of not cutting their hair, is they get that kind of wild man or wild woman effect, and it's a symbolic way of separating from people around them as well. And our sages are clear that that's never what we're supposed to do. Separation might feel to some people like a way to focus on holiness, and it makes sense that if we do separate, we can focus more intensely on one thing, including God. But that's not what we're doing. That's not what we should do in the ideal. Instead, we're supposed to find our holiness through connecting with the world around us in every way possible. Now, this is a teaching which would have been so appropriate anytime these past few months when we're living in this sense of isolation and separation, and to remind us to keep actively reaching out to one another would be so important. But this week, it means something a bit more specific to me, a bit more intense to me, because this is a week where a lot of us might have this need to separate from the world in a different way. We've all been watching the news and reading the stories online, and we've all been hearing about the murder of George Floyd and the protests which followed and the counter-protests and some of the violence which ensued, and all the ways the world just seems to be on fire right now. And probably every single person here has at least one time or another this past week or two wanted to just hide from it, wanted to just curl up on the couch and cover themselves in a blanket and wait for it to all go away. And one of the things our tradition is teaching us is that that desire, that impulse to hide is human, but we can't give into it. This is not the time to hide away from the world. This is the time to engage more fully in the world. Things are not going to get better if we just cover our eyes and pretend that they're not there. Things are only going to get better if people of good conscience, if people with a good soul, try to make them better. And so we really need to just stay active, and especially because there are people around us who don't have the option of hiding from this, and they need us with them. There are people who are afraid of the violence. There are people who are afraid of the injustice. There are people who are worried about their future and the future of their children, the future of their friends and family in this world, and they need to know that we are with them. Believe me, nobody wants more than I do sometimes to just hide away in a cave and pretend that none of this is happening, but it is happening, and it's our responsibility to be here with it as best as we can. I may want to crawl away and hide, but I'm not going to let myself do that, because my tradition is teaching me that that is not the real path to holiness. So I hope that we'll all be able to take Shabbat, to take a deep breath, regain some of the strength we might need, and to go out again and to face the world that will be made better because we've all done so. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.